Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Bethanne, and today I wanted to check in on how I think my first quarter of 2021 reading has gone. So this is going to be sort of a stats heavy, using the word stats loosely. There's going to be some graphs, but they're simple. Sort of graphs heavy video. If you're new to my channel or don't watch all my videos, I did a 2020 wrap-up video where I did this sort of stats and graphs thing. So I will link to that down below if you want to go see that. And the reason that I wanted to check in about this quarterly was at the end of 2020, I was actually a little bit surprised by how not diverse my reading had been in 2020. And I did start my BookTube channel towards the end of 2020, sort of September 30th, October 1st was right around when I started my BookTube channel. And I definitely became a lot more sort of consistent in meeting personal goals that I've had for a very long time after I started that channel. But what was really interesting to me was that even though I was reading a fair amount before I started my BookTube channel, I did have very loose goals in mind about wanting to diversify my reading, and I wasn't making them sort of on my own when I wasn't keeping track of things and sharing them with the world. And and I was pretty disappointed in that 2020 wrap up. So I'm going to be checking in quarterly over 2021 about how I'm reading with that. And partly one reason for that is that I know that my stats today, as we'll get into, are looking pretty good, but I want to be super cognizant that that's in large part because of Black History Month. I mean, I read a lot of works by BIPOC authors during Black History Month, and so I want to be sort of using this to push myself to continue that throughout the year. Okay, so let's dive into it. So over the first 3 months, so from January 1st to March 31st of 2021, I read a total of 30 books. Now the graphs and things that I'm going to show here actually include 32 books, 2 books that I've already finished in the month of April, but I didn't want to mess up by tracking or spend a lot of time on it by removing them just for this video. So we're looking at the first 32 books of the year. So total, that was about 8,200 pages plus some audiobooks, and that works out to an average of 79 pages per day. So that's sort of my first stat. And I'm not super happy with that. I would like to be in a place where I'm averaging about 100 pages per day, given that my reading can be pretty up and down over the course of a week with a job and parenting. But especially on the weekends, I'd like to be getting in a lot more reading and sort of bumping up that daily average. So that's my first goal, I guess, going into the next quarter, is keeping an eye on that. So now let's go ahead and dive into some charts. So the first one I wanted to take a super quick look at is this one, which is showing my breakdown of fiction versus nonfiction. So I'm only at about 25% nonfiction, and I would like to increase that a little bit over the course of 2021. I don't need to increase it a lot, but I would like to increase it a little bit. Then let's look at the genre. So as is pretty typical for me, I've got a pretty heavy reliance on sci-fi and fantasy. So here we're looking at about 35% of my total reading is sci-fi and fantasy, and then I've got a mix of other genres for the other percentages. So I'm actually really happy with the way this worked out. Sci-fi and fantasy definitely are my happy place, especially fantasy. So I never want to pressure myself not to read them. But one sort of goal with starting my BookTube channel was to try to read more that's not sci-fi and fantasy, just to be broadening my reading. And I'm someone who learns best, honestly, by reading a book. And so that's why I want to incorporate more nonfiction reading, more memoir, things like that, even just general fiction, but about places and people and cultures that I haven't been familiar with, because that's the way I learn. So I do want to encourage myself to be reading other genres. So I'm happy with the way that's broken down, but I do want to keep an eye on that 35% sci-fi and fantasy, and hopefully not let that creep up too much more. All right, next I wanted to look at the book source. So when I'm picking up a book, where has it come from? And the reason I wanted to show this is I've been purchasing a lot of books in 2021, which is not great. And I guess we can actually, we'll just dive into that right now. So I've been purchasing more books than usual a little bit, which I think is partly BookTube's fault. No offense, booktubers. You all are so great that I want to read all the books you read. So yeah, 34.4% of the books I've read so far in 2021 are things that I did purchase in 2021. And then the things that I like about this graph are I am reading a fair amount off of my own TBR, which is something I've really struggled with in the past, to pick up books that are just lying around, that I've had potentially for a really long time, and I just see them all the time, and so it doesn't occur to me to pick them up. So I would like that own TBR number to increase a bit, and then I like that about a third of the books I'm reading are coming from the library. So I think moving forward this year, I'd like to see that red part get a little bit smaller and that blue part get a little bit bigger. Just breaking down that purchased in 2021 block a little bit more. So far I have bought 34 books in 2021. We are 3 months in. That is not sustainable. And I've read 9 of those, which is good. I would like to read more of the books that I bought recently. But yeah, 34 books coming in over 3 months, I think is not good for me. Partly because I live in a small apartment and I am going to continue living in small apartments for at least one more sort of move, and that's a lot of books to move. And it's also a lot of money. Budgeting has been a bit easier with the pandemic because we're not getting out and doing stuff as much. And of course, this is sort of tax season and everything, which is great, but I do not want to be spending at this level for the rest of the year. So yeah, 34 books, and I've spent $384 total on books this year. So we're going to not do that for the rest of the year. All right, then let's look at the author, artist, gender. So I'm really happy with this. So far, about half of my reading has been from female authors, and 12% from authors who publicly identify as being non-binary, and 33% male authors. This graph does bother me a little bit because it sort of masks anybody who is transgender, because I categorize them, if you're a trans woman, then you're a woman. But I do want to be reading narratives by transgender folks, because that's an experience that I don't have. And so I don't have an easy way to track that, which is just like so nerdy and sort of dumb. But yeah, that's fine. I will, maybe I'll think about a little bit more if I want to track that a little bit differently. But overall, I'm very happy with this breakdown. I mean, I do tend to like a lot of female authors and their writing, and so I'm definitely very happy for that to be 50 or over 50%. So we'll see how that develops. Nation of origin is a bit embarrassing. I'm reading mostly from the US, with a smattering of other things thrown in. So this is one area of sort of diversifying my reading that I haven't been paying much attention to, and I likely won't be paying that much attention to it for the foreseeable future. I do want to keep an eye on it, but it's not a huge priority. Some of these other things are a bigger priority for me, but I do want to sort of keep including it to be accountable. I definitely don't want it to look any worse than this at the end of the year. Okay, then let's look at POC authors versus white authors. So this is where I'm starting to do a lot better than 2020, and why I really want to keep reminding myself that it's easier to do sort of better in this respect earlier in the year because of Black History Month, but I want to really continue it throughout the year. So right now I'm at about 56% white authors and 43% POC authors, and I do tend to use the word, the acronym BIPOC. And I'm sort of using loaded value words when I talk about my reading in this video, right? I'm talking about, oh, I'm doing badly, or oh, I'm doing better. So just to reiterate, that's in the context of the goals that I am setting for myself. And this goal of sort of the balance of BIPOC versus white authors that I'm reading is one that's really important to me. So as I've alluded to a few times in this video, I do want to read books by people who don't have my experience. And so there's sort of the opening my own mind, opening my own boundaries aspect of it. There's also sort of almost a reparations aspect of it, of sort of white experiences and white ways of writing and white viewpoints have overwhelmingly dominated the publishing world and the book reading world forever. And that's not right. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then if we want to just talk about numbers, it's like white people are a freaking global minority here, people. Like, this is ridiculous. I don't want to read just perspectives and viewpoints that come from a global minority. Like, that's boring to me. And also, like, I'm a white person growing up in the US. A lot of the people that I know are white, and certainly everybody in my biological family is white. And so it's like I already know a lot of that experience and viewpoints. Like, yes, there is always beautiful writing coming out that teaches me something that I don't know, coming from a white person or about white people. Like, absolutely, and I do want to read a lot of that. But that I don't want that to be all that I read or even the majority that I read. So, yeah, it's important to me to even this out more. So I'm happy with this split so far. I would like to see it get a little bit more towards 50-50 or even over 50-50 with more representation of BIPOC authors. So we will see how that goes over the rest of the year. Okay, and then here is POC protagonists versus white protagonists. So right now we're at exactly 50-50. I do try to read mostly own voices literature. You know, if there's a black protagonist or an indigenous protagonist, I vastly prefer a book that is written by someone who has sort of experience relevant to that character. The reason why this is a little bit offset from the author's graph that I just showed is because of Paying the Land by Joe Sacco. And Joe Sacco is white and did a comics journalism book about the experience of Indigenous people in British Columbia in Canada, and sort of their historical colonial experience with European colonization and the residential school experience, the whole history of that, and now to the history of natural resources exploitation in the region and all of the issues that is causing. So that's the difference between those two graphs currently. Okay, and then something else that I care about is queer author artists and queer protagonists. So in both of those graphs, I'll just put them both up. I'm at about a quarter queer author artists or queer protagonists. I do count as a queer protagonist if there is a well done sort of secondary character, and I feel like I ran into that where I was like really debating if I wanted to include it or not. So it wasn't like the main protagonist, but it was a person who was a really well developed character where their queerness was not tokenized in the book. And I wish I could. I'll try to look that up and at least put the title up. But anyway, so I do sort of count that as well if I think it's well done. Okay, and then I think that is everything that I wanted to cover in terms of my charts and stats for the first quarter. So overall, I'm very happy with my progress. The reason that I'm happy with my progress is because I wasn't super happy with my 2020 annual wrap-up version of this. So I am happy to be noting progress towards my goals, and I would really like to keep that consistent moving forward through the rest of 2021 and improve slightly on the things that I mentioned in this video, or things that I do want to improve on, just looking at my progress so far in 2021. So I hope that was interesting. If any of you have nerdy quarterly stats videos, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of mine. If there are any areas where you struggle that are goals for you, just let's have a chat in the comments down below. And I should mention actually briefly, I did get this idea from Josh over at Josh's Bookish Voyage. I haven't checked yet to see if he has a March quarterly update going up, but through 2020, I noticed that he had several quarterly updates with these charts, and it just seemed like a really great way to stay on track of my reading goals. So that's why I have adopted this from him. So go check out his channel if you haven't already. Yeah, he has an absolutely amazing channel. It's one of my favorites. All right, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.